Let's take your track Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What was the initial idea or the initial spark that's...
The initial well, Crazy was a pretty crazy song. It had a long journey. It was an original idea by my friend Kashmir Cat and Benny Blanco. They had the idea to combine two samples, one sample by a band named Blackstreet and one sample by a band named Powers. And we worked on a few different versions together and we couldn't really figure it out. And then at one point I tried something that finally worked and sort of turned that into my song. I think sort of my intention with it is I love bringing R&B and gospel references into electronic music.
Okay.
I think that's one of the things that sort of I've contributed with when it comes to electronic music. So combining a classic Blackstreet sample with huge production in that way is sort of I don't know. I just love R&B. I just want to bring R&B back.
So is that, well, you're gearing up towards an album. Is that what you're trying to do with that album, to bring R&B back?
Sort of. I mean, I think that's my general motive. This album is definitely a very personal and honest album. So sort of this album is sort of a piece of its own. It's there's a story from the beginning to the end. Each song is sort of a new phase in this process, and sort of everything is a lot of overthinking, a lot of details. So with this one, it was more important to me to, well, say the project with this one, honestly, was to explore the feelings. Or like the nuances of feelings. Usually when you're sad, you write a very slow and dark song about it. And I wanted to explore, what about the intensity of sadness? What about the inspiration of sadness? What about the frustration of sadness? What about the anger that can be in sadness? So I tried to make music for each emotion in this process where I was exploring it in a different way, in a different nuance than what would be very natural when you're trying to tell a story.
Right.
So because of that, there's a lot of weird stuff on it. There's a lot of very different moods. There's a lot of very different styles of production and formats of songs, really. So it's quite the journey of an album. It definitely is.
And you say it's a personal album, a very honest album. So
Yes.
can I assume it's autobiographical?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes.
And with these kind of very personal things, what's it like to have people know what you're going through, or so in a sense share kind of your personal feeling?
It's very powerful.
Okay.
It's very, very powerful. For me, the most important thing is that whenever I write about people that have been in my life or that are in my life or that I've had history with or interactions with or whatever, people that come into my life, I never want it to be in a gossipy way. I would never try to expose somebody. I would never try to take advantage of somebody's story or coming into my life or anything like that. The important thing for me is exploring what was that experience, what was those emotions, what was the underlying cause, what was the sort of the artistic parts of it. And so I would never I always write things very vaguely, very not exposing and not gossipy sort of.
And then finally, then, do you have an album title yet?
I do. The name of the album is Everything.
Okay.
It's a concept album. It's a chronological story from the first song to the last song. This fly is my friend. We're hanging out a lot lately, and yeah, it's very emotional for me, and hopefully for the listener as well.
Do you go back to those emotions when you perform the songs?
I'm sorry?
Do you go back to those emotions when you perform the songs?
Oh, absolutely.
Does it take you back to the moment when you...
We actually did, I played Coachella earlier this year, and we performed the entire album from the first song to the last song in the story, and I cried like 5 times during that. It was really intense. So yeah, I absolutely go back to those emotions, and I'm very easily affected by music in general.
What is the toughest song for you to get through?
On the album, there is the cool thing about the album is that most of the songs on the album happened at the time where I was in that place. So sort of every song relates back to a situation, and even the featured artists play the parts that they played in my life on the album, and sort of it's a very real album for me. So there's one point, there's a very long song, a very naked song with just piano and vocals. That is probably like the toughest song for me, because it was a one take, a freestyle that I did when I was on the bottom, and sort of after probably 3 hours of playing the piano, I suddenly came up with this little part, and I used that part when I, like, as you can hear me coming up with it in the album. So that was like just a capturing of a moment that was just very special to me. So that's probably the toughest one, I think.
Final question then, and then you can share as much as you like, but what kind of started that song? What did you go through? Where there?
Well, like the entire album is sort of a post breakup album. So it's a very interesting album because most of it happens in my head. Most of it is about my emotional journey after a breakup.
Right.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the breakup, really. It doesn't even have much to do with the relationship. It is sort of my emotional status of getting over it. Really going through, almost like, you know how there's like stages of grief?
Sure.
Yeah, so you would have like, you'd be in denial at first, and then you'd be desperate, and then you'd be angry, and then you get perspective, and then you accept the fact, and then there's a conclusion, and so on. So the song that I'm talking about is sort of the turning point, the point where I need to decide, how do I actually feel? I've gone through every emotion. I am so exhausted, I have no idea what I feel anymore. I need to figure this out right now. What am I feeling? So yeah, that was a very long night in the studio in Los Angeles.
And the album is now finished, so do you have now a better understanding of
Absolutely. The album helped me a lot. The album was very important to sort of to dealing with it, and to fully understand it. And I'm a very analytical person, so overthinking it usually helps me. So writing about it and getting it out, and sort of understanding more about how my brain works, and how my emotions affect me, definitely was very important.
Thank you very much for your time.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.